Ladies and gentlemen, friends of free trade, open markets, global commerce, a warm welcome to this year's virtual World Trade Day. The World Trade Day is an annual event organized by the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce together with our partners ICC Sweden and the Association of Trade Partners Sweden. This year, I'm super happy to say that we have been able also to co-organize this event together with the Swedish Chambers International and Business Sweden, which is Sweden's export promotion powerhouse. My name is Andreas Hatzigeorgiou, and I'm the CEO of the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce. Today's event will focus on the launch of the newly revised Global Business Climate Survey, a Team Sweden project, built upon the unique partnership between Business Sweden, Swedish Chambers International, and Swedish embassies all around the globe. It would be an understatement to say that 2020 has been a challenging year. The pandemic has caused both pain and sorrow, and we're still in the midst of the pandemic. To launch the new Business Climate Survey globally during this trying time has, of course, been challenging. But the results stemming from the survey are perhaps more important than ever before in a time of protectionism, polarization, chauvinism, and closed borders. The Swedish Chambers International Network is a corporation between the Swedish Chambers of Commerce abroad, and the networks have together outlined a strategy based on three objectives. The first one being to develop and maintain a systemic exchange of ideas and knowledge between the Swedish Chambers of Commerce abroad. Second one being to promote contacts between the Swedish Chambers of Commerce abroad and the Swedish Chambers of Commerce and other organizations in Sweden, such as the ICC Sweden and Business Sweden, and many other organizations as well. And to, thirdly, assist the Swedish Chambers of Commerce abroad in establishing contacts with decision-making bodies and authorities within Sweden. In the role as chairperson of the Swedish Chambers International, I am proud of the work done by the network, and I'm very excited about the important involvement of the Swedish Chambers abroad in this collaborative effort surrounding the role of the newly launched Business Climate Survey. And I can promise you, we have a lot of interesting insights and results and takeaways that will be presented as part of this initiative here today. So again, a warm welcome, and this is really a symbol of the importance and an effort into keeping markets and also our minds open in these trying times. So welcome to this World Trade Day of 2020. I would now like to hand over the word to Mrs. Ylva Berg, who is the CEO of Business Sweden, for her opening words. Ylva, a warm welcome.
Thank you, Andreas. Ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends, thank you for joining us here today. Like Andreas, I am so very happy to see that so many of you have chosen to join us here today for this very important meeting when we will discuss trade. Some of you are here in real life, but most of you are actually joining us digitally. And I think that this new way of meeting is really a good one. It means that we can be almost 500 people on the line exchanging ideas later on. And that's truly something unique, as Andreas pointed out. I believe I can speak for all of you when I say that this year has truly and deeply affected our lives, our personal lives and our professional lives in a fundamental way. The corona pandemic has deprived us of many things that we have taken for granted for so many years. We all long for a return to a normality in life again. But the question is, what will that normality look like? And what will it look like from a business perspective? A few numbers illustrate the magnitude of this crisis that Andreas was highlighting earlier, the pandemic. World trade in goods fell by 20% during the first half of this year, and cross-border direct investments are expected to fall by 30 to 40% during the full year of 2020. The global economy may contract by 4 percentages, which is exceptional from all perspectives. This is, of course, very alarming news for a trade and foreign direct investment dependent country like Sweden. At Business Sweden, we are very closely following the development and doing our utmost to support Swedish companies abroad in the strong belief and hope that the world markets should bounce back to normality. To that end, Business Sweden, the Swedish Chambers of Commerce, the Sweden embassies and consulates have partnered up to produce the Business Climate Survey for 24 markets in the world. We have carried out surveys for more than 20 years in many different markets, but they have all been individually performed. The big difference this time is that we, together, all of us, start to streamline the studies to be able to compare findings and make trends over time. And that is where our partner, the Stockholm School of Economics, is coming in very handy. Because I believe that there has been a shortage for too long in the academic world when looking into what importance and the dependence we have to importance trade is meaning to us in Sweden, and what we can do in order to facilitate an easier life for Swedish companies doing trade. My hope is that this survey will become an annual one, and we all, in close collaboration with the Stockholm School of Economics, will be able to follow trends and extract findings that would make it possible for us to faster understand how to best support Swedish companies in this rapidly changing business landscape. I am happy that we can share some of the results in the report with you here today, and I certainly look forward to listening in to all your comments and the findings that we will be able to find out more about in the next coming hour. Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you, Ylva, and thank you also to your team at Business Sweden, which is working tirelessly to help and promote Swedish global business in these trying times. Very important work. Now I would like to hand over the word to Business Sweden's chief economists, prominent economist, and really at the forefront of what is going on around the world in presenting the survey. But before I do that, we have the State Secretary with us, Krister Nilsson, who is the State Secretary for Sweden's Trade Minister. So we will invite you to provide your insights and your reflections on the theme of today's event. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be able to share some views on the topic of today with you before listening to the deep insights and that has been the result of the work that you already presented, very important work. It's important for us, of course, as a government, because trade and global business development is a key priority for this government, and it has been for the governments before. It's Basically, as Ylva said, it's something that is very important for us as a small export-dependent country. So this is a very important event, and I'm looking forward to hear more about the insights. The ambition we have is high. We strive for growing export and foreign investments in general. We should export more. More regions in Sweden should grow their export. More companies, including SMEs, should be a part of the export. And also companies led by women shall be in the forefront of the global development. These are clearly set out goals, and we are discussing on a daily basis how we can develop our policies in order to reach these goals. I would say that the development of our export investment policies is very much a learning process and a team effort. We should do what we do as efficient as possible, and we are continuously developing the supporting tools. This event, this webinar, this report is a very good example of the dialogue and the insights that we need in order to do so. So for this reason, I welcome the Global Business Climate Survey, mapping out the interest and needs of the Swedish export companies around the world. It provides timely insights that will be important while we develop our export and investment policies even further. As you all know, we presented a new strategy in December. We have the situation with the pandemic where we all have been focusing on helping out and reaching out to each other and manage the situation. But the implementation of that strategy is ongoing and will be even more a part of the recovery that we so very much need in the autumn and for the next year. So I looking forward to cooperate even more and have this as a learning process when developing the implementation also of that strategy. The reason for the priorities, as mentioned, is when we are so dependent on the export, when we have the 49,000 exporting companies, the 1.5 million employees in the industries dependent on export, and nearly half our GDP. So it's deeply a very fundamental priority for the government. And it has been even more obvious, I think, during the challenging time that's already been mentioned. We had our priorities, we have our networks, we have the way of working that we have established before the crisis. And I would say that it helped us during the crisis. And I think it's also gives us some direction on where to move ahead. The crisis have, of course, made us focus on different insights and aspects. The disruption of the global value chains that has been extremely serious, the global complexity and the need for deep insights and market knowledge in decision making, the importance of the EU and the functioning of the single market, as well as the Nordic market as a good example. We need a social dialogue and social stability for a long-term perspective. And we see that our strength in digitalization, health and sustainability is something that we can develop even further. So even if Sweden is not an exception in the global pattern, I think we have seen positive signs in trade flows that are regaining. We have seen a very good cooperation between companies and institutions when it comes to manage the situation, the difficult situation during the spring. So against this background, I think that the Global Business Climate Survey is an important contribution to our policy making. It offers a better understanding of where opportunity lies, what factors matters for success, and what challenges companies face. For example, key factors for success includes cost efficiency, brand attractiveness, partnership, local relationship, as well as customer collaboration. And it strikes me that all these aspects of competitiveness benefit from the Team Sweden approach that you, Andreas, also mentioned, and that we promote. Efficient and smart collaboration between various state and private actors, under the Swedish brand enable new partnership and focus on new markets and gives us strength in relation to the goals that we want to achieve. And this, of course, can and must be developed further based on the insights in the survey. But also the areas of concern of many companies are a low level of digitalization, labor market regulations, corporate taxation, lack of transparency, lack of equal treatment. Issues supported by our focus on a new platform for international sustainable business, human rights, social dialogue as within the global deal, anti-corruption and inclusive economies. So the questions, both where we see the success factors, but also the challenges, should be taken into account when developing these different initiatives. And when it comes to the challenges, of course, these questions is and should always be included in the political dimension of export promotion. And we can develop our cooperation on social dialogue and the other dimensions even further. So once again, this is a team effort. I'm looking forward for how to develop this together with all you participating in this event. I think that the Swedish export company has shown a great leadership, and I want to say that because we have had lots of dialogue during the spring. You have taken a great responsibility within your value chain. You have been working together between companies and shown lots of responsibility in a very extreme situation. And I think that is something that makes me very proud as representing the government and strengthen the Swedish brand. And I would also like to convey my appreciation for the tremendous efforts undertaken by embassies abroad together with Business Sweden, EKN and SEK to solve concrete problems and relate to export restrictions, supply and distribution chains disruption during the spring. There has been so many proactive initiatives and lots of people put in lots of efforts into solving problems, showing that there is a real team Sweden approach that has been very successful and it's powerful, and that is also worth mentioning. So when moving forward, we will focus on the export and investment strategy presented last December. We have taken extra measures during the crisis and are now moving on to restart our joint efforts. We will focus on the export support in all regions for all companies and having sustainability, health and digitalization as a platform. And we will work for a functional global market with a multilateral approach. We have initiated like-minded groups in free trade. We are working with the EU trade policy this autumn, which will be a very important step for safeguarding the policies and politics that we need. And we will include the insights presented that will be presented in today's event, and of course all the discussions that we can listen to, all the insights that you present from the field. So I'm looking forward to cooperate, listen more to the insights, and I'm sure that all the insights for today will be a strength in moving forward, supporting Swedish companies abroad also in the next step. So thank you very much for inviting me, having me, and giving me the ability to say some words, but also, most importantly, listen to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Krister Nilsson, State Secretary to the Minister for Foreign Trade and Nordic Affairs, Anna Hallberg. And thank you for those encouraging remarks, reminding us of all the great work that is being done out there globally by actors such as Business Sweden, embassies, but also, of course, the Swedish chambers active and present all around the globe. And thank you also for all the work that the government is doing in trying to keep markets open and keep promoting Swedish companies' global business. With that, we are, without further ado, handing over the floor to Lena Sellgren, Chief Economist of Business Sweden. She will present the global analysis conducted in response to the results of the business climate surveys conducted around the world this year. Please, Lena.
Thank you so much, Andreas, and hi, everyone. The global economy and when it comes to regionalization, we see more and more of the globalization slowing down, and we see that the world is becoming more and more regionalized. And what does this mean? Of course, for a small open economy like the Swedish one, it's not so much of good news. And if we look into this, we can see actually that we have today more of 3 economic powerhouses in this regionalization that is an ongoing trend. So we have North America, we have Europe, and the Asian Pacific region. And localization decisions are more and more taking into account other factors than low costs and low wages when they take their decisions on where to localize. So it's more on digitalization, technology, being close to the customer, which means that we see this playing out at the same time as we have all these ongoing trade war, tech war between the superpowers, China and the US. We will have to live with this for a long time, as I see it at least. And we have all these economies moving more inwards. And we have, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic that is actually putting the global economy into recession. So we will have some time where it will be hard for many economies, many companies, a gradual recovery. And this means that we need to understand even more how companies actually should navigate the new business climate. And it's sure that we have to adapt to a new reality. So what we have done, it has been mentioned by all of previous welcoming keynote speakers, that we need to understand even more what challenges, opportunities we see out on the different markets where our Swedish companies are operating. So we have collected these surveys, and now we have these compiled in a unique database where we can actually do a lot of different analysis. So what I will do today is actually to share some of the insights that we have got out from this analysis. And it will be divided into 3 main focus areas. First of all, success factors, and then moving on a bit into local conditions, and of course, sustainability, both environmental aspects and also, of course, corruption and labor and human rights. So looking into these, the success factors that we have, one of these factors, actually the main one for overall results, show that sales competence is by far the most important factor for being competitive out in the different markets. And probably this is not a surprise for us, because you need always to close a deal, otherwise you will not continue with your business. But there are other factors as well. Cost efficiency is important for the companies, brand awareness, partnership, and local relationships are factors that the companies rank very high. And what you can see on this slide is actually the share of companies choosing these different categories as top 3 factors, importance for being competitive on the global market. So more than 30% choose this sales competence as the most important. Maybe looking into this when we have these promotion organizations present as we all are, and the collaboration, is maybe that we can question a little bit why we see that these public affairs and governmental affairs is more a minor part, a bit less than 10%, that actually say that this is important for competitiveness. I think this is something that we should deep dive into and see, can we do even more? Because I think this represents more the view of the companies, that they need to be aware of the support that we actually have within the whole system. And it's also interesting to see how does this differ between different regions. We are able now with this harmonized survey to look more into regions, compare different markets as well. And we have 24 markets put together in 4 different regions. One is Americas, and unfortunately, we this year do not have the US included. So remind yourself when listening to this that in Americas, the US is not included because it's not in the survey. And then we have Western Europe and the Asian Pacific region and Middle East Africa. So that's the 4 regions that I will show some of the results. So here you have a lot of information in this slide, but what you can see is that there are some regional differences, but what goes for all regions is actually that cost efficiency is top 3 ranked among all the regions. And when it comes to sales competence, that was the most important factor when asking the companies. This goes for all regions except for the APAC region. And then looking into these different regions, you can see that they differ a little bit when it comes to Americas. Cost efficiency is an important factor. Western Europe, we have the brand awareness. And both APAC and the Middle East African region, it's mentioned more that it's important with partnership and relationships. Probably what most of us expect from these regions. And also looking into brand Sweden, is this important for the companies? And they rank it, as you can see here in this slide. So it's quite good figures. It's ranked between 1 and 5, as you can see here. And when it comes to brand Sweden, it contributes to business across all regions. And even if it looks like that there are differences, you can see that it's a very, very narrow span that you have between these regions. But it's most important in the Middle East, Africa region and Americas as well. Not to the same extent when it comes to Western Europe. And then moving on to more of looking into the local conditions. How satisfied are our Swedish companies abroad looking into the conditions that they met on the markets where they operate? Can actually see that the most important factor for the companies where they're most satisfied is actually when it comes to access to qualified partners, which means the distributors, suppliers, that they rank very, very high, and they are so satisfied with all these factors. It goes across all regions as well. They are less satisfied with digitalization. You can see this on the right-hand side in the graph. And also when it comes to labor regulations and also corporate taxation. And here we can see some regional differences as well. Not when it comes to the highest ranks. It's similar for all countries. So access to qualified partners, they are very satisfied with this. But when it comes to digitalization, this is special something that is mentioned in Western Europe. They are not satisfied to the same extent in Europe, compared to other regions when it comes to digitalization. And digitalization scores quite low, even if you could say ranking from 1 to 9, and it's quite a decent figure that we see, but still they are not so satisfied with digitalization. And going more and more into a digitalized world, we can actually question this, how to handle this for the companies. And the labor market regulations and equal treatment, this goes more for the Asian Pacific region and also the Middle East African region, where the companies are less satisfied with this. And also moving on to Americas, companies present on the American market, mention that corporate taxation is something that they are not satisfied with. So this is the picture when we look into more of the needs that companies have on the local markets. So the last part is sustainability, and Swedish companies are very innovative. Sustainability, innovation, and design is actually how we brand Swedish companies abroad. And we are very, very much into looking into more of how can we add value, how can we contribute with Swedish innovative sustainable solutions to meet the Paris Agreement and the challenges that we have globally, so not least the global climate change. So then it's interesting to ask the companies also, how do they, their customers value sustainability aspects in their purchases when it comes to goods, services, as well as solutions. So this is one of the questions in the survey. Very interesting results that I will show now. And as you can see here, it's a very mixed view on how customers, their considerations of environmental aspects. So 1/3 approximately of the company answer that it's important for their customers with environmental aspects. It's much or very much important for them. But on the other hand, you can see that also 1/3 said that it's not important and not important at all. And also 1/3 that is more neutral about the environmental aspects. And this is something that I also think is important to deep dive a little bit into, to understand what do we need to do to increase this value of getting the Swedish innovative solutions out in the market, because their customers need to be aware of the benefits that we have from environmental friendly solutions. Comparing between regions, we see that it's most important, maybe as expected, in Western Europe. That's the only one. It's ranking from between 1 and 5. So that's the only region where we actually can see that it's passed a bit more than 3 on this ranking 1 to 5. 1 is not important, and 5 is, of course, very important. So Western Europe, it's only small differences between the different regions, but it's most important with environmental considerations when it comes to Western Europe. And then you can see for the other regions, it's not that important. So quite low scoring when it comes to environmental benefits, and this needs to be increased, of course, globally. And the last part or factors that we have been looking into is, of course, corruption and human and labor rights. And you can see here that the blue bars representing corruption. So corruption is a greater challenge than risk of encountering human and labor rights abuse. The yellow ones, yellow bars in this slide. And it differs a little bit between different regions. So it's more of a challenge in Americas. And remember then that the US is not included in the region Americas. And the most problem or the most the markets in Americas that have the biggest challenge here is actually Mexico and Brazil. And the other regions you can see that it's not as important as in Americas and Middle East, Africa. So to summarize this, where do we stand? We can see that there are some markets globally where Swedish companies see a positive, has a positive view on the business climate, and it's Canada, Singapore. closely followed by Hong Kong, the UK, UAE, and France as well. These countries or markets are actually the ones that Swedish companies see have a very good business climate for their businesses. But to summarize, we need to understand even more. We need to do even more work out of this. There is a lot of data that we have collected. We can look into different aspects of this. But what is sure is actually that we see a new business landscape developing out there beyond COVID-19, and we have to adapt to the new reality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lena, for that interesting presentation. And it was really some mind-blowing slides there on fascinating aspects of trade and commerce, Swedish brand, and so forth. Now it is time for our panel discussion. And I'm happy to say that we have an excellent lineup of speakers with us, both digitally and here in Stockholm. Jonas Lindström is the CEO of Swedcham Brazil. David Hallgren is Vice President of Asia Pacific Business Sweden. Krister Podgorski is President and CEO of Scania Latin America. Ingemar Eriksson is the General Manager and Global Head of Supply Chain for CabinAir Tech out of Shenzhen, China. And Susanna Zeko, which is Secretary General of ICC Sweden. Super happy to have this lineup of speakers with us today. And you are watching and participating in the World Trade Day 2020. So I would like to begin with Jonas Lindström out of Brazil. Trade and investment promotion organizations, such as Business Sweden, such as the embassies, such as the Swedish chambers all around the globe, they actively work to promote brand Sweden. And we just heard Lena Sellgren, the chief economist of Business Sweden, talk about brand Sweden, which was a question in the survey also. So my question to you, Jonas, how can Swedish companies, together with our trade and investment promotion organizations, continue to keep brand Sweden attractive globally, rather, and keeping it up to date, and also increasing the awareness around the brand? And also, I will take the opportunity to ask a follow-up question to that question, and that is the million-dollar question, whether you think that Sweden's pandemic response and our strategy has affected the Swedish brand. Go ahead, Jonas.
Okay, first of all, thank you, Andreas, and all organizers for the invitation to take part in this panel. As you know, the project was partly launched exactly 1 year ago, right there at the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce during a Team Sweden event. And little did we know then about the challenges that would come. And it has been a bumpy road implementing a new survey during the worst social and financial crisis in modern times. So as a member of the project steering committee, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has contributed to the report. It has really been a unique teamwork in very difficult times. Congratulations to all 24 participating countries through embassies, consulates, Business Sweden offices, chambers. And last but not least, a big thank you to all the companies that invested some of your very valuable time to fill in the survey. Now, regarding brand Sweden, in the survey we asked, to what extent do you estimate that brand Sweden contributes to your company's business success? And the result shows that Sweden's brand identity is valued almost equally important across all regions. Only 4% see no value at all in promoting the Swedishness of the product or the service they are offering. There are, however, some differences between markets, and the ones with the highest scores were Greece, India, the Emirates, and Turkey. And the lowest, or rather less high, were Portugal, the UK, Canada, and a little surprising, China. And it's a fact that Sweden's brand identity is synonymous with innovation, equality, and sustainability, among other values. And many companies use their Swedish origin to communicate these brand features. I could give hundreds of examples from all over the world of how local Team Sweden constellations work to promote the best of Sweden at all times. But since we have limited time, just one example from Brazil, where we are running a joint project with the whole team involved, meaning the embassy, the consulates, Business Sweden, and the chamber, where we have produced a series of short videos presenting brief conversations with company employees to find out what are the most striking points of this transition period in which we are all living. And these changes end up being related to concepts such as sustainability, innovation, trust, and responsibility, ideas that are deeply rooted in our culture, and that at this moment end up reinforcing the company's commitment to Brazil in the long run. It's important to be humble and listen and not give the impression that we always know better and we are out there to teach. Promotion is not a one-way communication, and I think having a dialogue is crucial. So we invite local stakeholders, both companies and public authorities, to discuss sustainable business values. And digital media has become even more important in times of social distancing, and we must continue being active and show concrete actions on how our companies work with Swedish values. And this is being done through images, photos, live webinars, videos, interviews, and more. It's really a privilege to work as a promoter of Brand Sweden. And since it is associated with so many positive values, it is a true door opener. And apparently our companies are also proud of representing Sweden. And coming to your second question, Andreas, about if the Corona strategy has hurt the brand Sweden. And looking at the survey results, it doesn't seem that way, since the rating of Brand Sweden is still very high. Here in Brazil, for example, it was pretty much the same as last year. And we have talked about this in the board for Swedish Chambers International, and some directors see that, yes, the brand, at least short term, has taken a hit. It's easy to become a target when you take the high road, as it were. And on this occasion, it was a lonely one. However, even if many articles and media around the world have been critical to the Swedish way of handling the crisis, it's our impression that most people understand that each market is unique, with its own challenges, pre-existing healthcare systems, and of course, demographics. On most markets, Sweden's strategy has been met with curiosity and interest. And again, it's important to be humble and listen to the local decision makers and have a dialogue, since today no one really knows who have made the best decisions. It's a fact that Sweden has been in the limelight of international media more than ever, and this is definitely an opportunity. After all, there is no such thing as bad publicity. All of us who work with promoting Brand Sweden should take this opportunity to talk less about COVID-19 strategies and more about what Brand Sweden really stands for, and all positive values which have made Sweden into the great country it is today. So that was about Brand Sweden.
Thank you, Jonas. Extremely interesting and interesting reflections, and also thank you for the hard work that you have been doing also in your role in Swedish Chambers International in coordinating together with other team members this survey. I would now like to move over to China. We're basically virtually now flying across the globe, but without any carbon footprint. So that's an advantage of these virtual meetings. So I would like to move over to China, as I said, and to David Hallgren of Business Sweden. David, sales competence is ranked as the most important factor to maintain competitiveness. Cost efficiency is second. Other almost equally important factors are brand awareness, partnerships, and local relationships, and collaborations with and feedback from customers. So my question to you is, do you think that we will see an increasing trend towards regionalization? We heard also Lena talk about this. Regionalization of trade for Swedish companies in the future. That is the question. And I'm asking this because, sure, you might have advantages with global supply chains, but also with regional supply chains, you have some advantages of closer proximity to customers, deeper cooperation with local sub-suppliers and so forth. So what is your take on this, regionalization?
Thank you, Andreas. Absolutely. In short, the answer is yes. I think we can expect shorter supply chains and regionalizations to some extent. But of course, that belief comes with some caveats and a few points that I would like to make to add some nuance to that answer. So the first point is that in terms of the physical supply chains, there will likely be a period now where we on average see some shortening of them due to the reasons you mentioned, as well as others, for example, related to risk. And that implies that regional change will be a larger share compared to global solutions. But there are also many examples of further fragmentation with increased localization at a later stage, where more value add is done locally in specific markets. So it's important to qualify what we mean by regionalization and localization. And to some extent, this can also be seen as quite natural when emerging markets, such as many of those in Asia Pacific, reach critical mass in the region. The equation simply shifts, where it makes sense to have more regional trade versus long distance trade. So part of it can come from maturity, part of it comes from some of these underlying trends and shifts in priorities. The second point I would like to make is that more value creation now is happening in new forms. For example, as digital services. So there might be an argument for other forms of global solutions, less burdened by physical borders, as you mentioned for today's meeting. However, also here we see trends for regionalization and localization as more countries and regions explore how digital borders, in the form of different laws and regulations and standards, can be used to control the digital landscape. And here it is still early days, but I expect we will see more companies realizing that also in the digital space there is a need to diversify and create more heterogeneous solutions across the world. And the third and final point is that, which you partly alluded to, that it's very important to do this with a holistic approach to these changes, not only see them as an optimization or rebalancing of internal operations, for example, where closeness to partners, lead times, local value add as a message in positioning, relating it to environmental impact, has to be integrated and part of the commercial strategy for these investments to pay off.
Answer, and it also helps us to widen our eyes in looking at the results from the survey and also the analysis that is provided to us. I will mention this. After this seminar is over, we will distribute the analysis to all of the participants. So if you didn't have time to really take notes on every single slide that Lena Sellgren was showing, don't be worried. The analysis will be distributed to you after the seminar is over. Now we are flying back to Brazil, and we are calling on Krister Podgorski, who's the president and CEO of Scania Latin America. Krister, nice to see you. And the results from our business climate survey indicate that digitalization, I was really surprised by this result, by the way, digitization and public affairs are overall not considered key factors for companies to remain competitive. So my question to you, basically, right off the bat is, why do you think digitization as well as public affairs are not regarded as key success factors? And what is your view on this?
Well, Andreas, I think we're both surprised with this result, but maybe we should put it within the context that the survey was done in the middle of the pandemic. And it's an unprecedented pandemic in Latin America, particularly in Brazil. We still have serious effects of this, the coronavirus 19 pandemic. So, of course, in those days, and when answering the survey, everyone was with the mindset on costs, on safeguarding cash flow, on delaying CapEx investments. Well, it was survival mode. And then, of course, sales competence raised top in the ranking to sustain a minimum revenue stream to keep us alive. I think that is valid for all business. But I believe that the pandemic also taught us a lot. And fortunately, we already were in the digitalization journey. Because digitalization is not only an enabler for a successful business environment, but in this case, during the pandemic, it was not an enabler, it was essential for business continuity. So that's point number one. So different companies, different maturity levels, different roadmaps can explain why digitalization was not top in the ranking. But in our view, digitalization is key for cost efficiency and higher competitiveness. In our case particularly, we have been for years developing sustainable transport solutions, and connectivity and digitalization seems to be fundamental in order to gain efficiency, reduce the carbon footprint, etc., in any transport or logistics systems. So connected services is not the future, it's the present for us. And particularly here in our industrial hub in São Paulo, we are investing tremendously in Industry 4.0, in automation, in data warehousing, data analytics, advanced analytics, data mining, artificial intelligence, you name it. And it's much about the knowledge and the spread of the knowledge of digitalization amongst all your fellow colleagues in each company and each business. So it's also an education gap that has to be fulfilled, but we work heavily on that. And when we come to public affairs, again, I'm relatively surprised with the result of the survey because a good public affairs relation, governmental relations, was essential to restart our operations. You know that in industrial operations, you cannot do everything via home office, right? I can't assemble a truck or a bus chassis via home office. So a good relation with the government, understanding the regulations, having a close dialogue with them, with unions and all the other stakeholders that are involved, enabled us to be the last company to stop and the first one to return in the automotive industry in the middle of the pandemic. But we were shut down for 5 weeks, and until we were sure that we had all regulations fulfilled, ticking all the boxes, securing safety and sanitization regulations attended in a clear way, we were not able to restart. So being a global company, being present in 120 countries, it is essential to have good public affairs activities to understand the business environment and even to be some kind of a competitive advantage. So these 2 points were low in the ranking, but they were essential during the pandemic and still are right now to define what is the new business environment, the new normal, the new landscape, as Lena explained.
Thank you so much, Christopher, for your interesting remarks. And let's fly back to China and join Ingemar Eriksson of CabinAir Tech out of Shenzhen in China. So, Ingemar, thank you for joining us. Swedish companies are, according to the survey and the analysis, least satisfied with local levels of digitization, jumping off the question and the conversation with Krister we just had on digitization as well. So, in terms of meeting the needs of companies at the local level, what is your take on the level of digitization, and do you think that we might be able to see an improvement in local levels of digitization as a result of the COVID-19 crisis? Speaking of issues with local levels of digitization, we are right now experiencing some difficulties with digitization. We will try to reconnect with Ingemar. His screen is frozen. We are trying to, again, reconnect with Ingemar. And basically, even though I had been looking forward to this conversation with Ingemar, just the fact that we're not able to connect actually shows the issues that companies might face with local levels of digitization. And although the pandemic is terrible in many ways, we might see improvements after the COVID-19 pandemic. I suggest we move on to our next speaker, who is luckily not trying to connect with us over link, but rather with us here today in Stockholm. A warm welcome to Susanna Zeko, Secretary General of ICC Sweden. You are with us here in person, and I'm glad to have you here. So my first question to you, Susanna, is to which extent you think that the pandemic will overshadow efforts on more sustainable business?
Thank you, Andreas. And to be honest, and this maybe it goes a bit against the result of the survey that we had presented here today, but I don't agree that the pandemic will overshadow company sustainability work, and mainly for 3 reasons. If I look at my member companies and their work on sustainability, it's quite clear that they are in it for the long run. It's not a philanthropic exercise for them, and it's not either a sweet add-on to their daily operations. It's hardcore strategical business, and they simply can't afford to not focus on sustainability due to the pandemic crisis. That's the first dimension to it. The second one is that rather than overshadowing sustainability, I see a new focus on environmental issues and long-term resilience. More people have learned that deforestation and other environmental damages has increased the transmission of diseases from animals to human beings. And once again, pointing out that the health of people is closely linked to the health of our planet. And finally, I also note that the social impacts of the pandemic have sort of unboxed the importance of new dimensions on sustainability for several companies. And mainly, I see a growing focus on issues as unemployment, inequality, and poverty. And this is very important because if we look at the world's common global sustainability agenda, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, it consists of 17 goals and 169 targets. These are all truly connected. And our most successful sustainability-driven companies, they have a very holistic approach to their sustainability work. And I believe that after the pandemic, we will see even more successful sustainable businesses arise.
Very interesting. So in addition, Susanna, to these efforts to greening the economy, greening the business models, what are the key business success factors that you see in the future? And adding to that, I mean, the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce, the ICC here in Sweden, not the least, we together try to collaborate. Every year we collaborate on the World Trade Day, which is an amazing collaboration. But how do you think that we in a wider scope could collaborate, even with more actors and more stakeholders?
So in regards to your first question, I mean, I already raised the importance of thinking long-term and thinking on sustainability. To that, I would also like to add to think global. Please don't fall into short-sighted post-crisis trends of onshoring, domestic self-sufficiency, and bringing home and safeguarding your supply chains. Seek your greater safety in international diversification, because economic logic almost always show that this is the right approach. Unfortunately, in regards to challenges, some politicians often don't. In regards to the collaboration point, I really want to raise the importance of Business Sweden here, because we need to understand that the concept of Business Sweden is unique in the collaboration between state and business. This is something we have to take care of, and we have to make sure that the work carried out by Business Sweden on a local level is properly financed. I also want to raise the importance of the upcoming Expo 2021, which I believe will be really important. Because after the pandemic, I believe that the Expo will be a bit like today, sort of like an international trade kickoff. And we have to be there, government and business, to illustrate that we are innovative and that we are open for international collaboration. So there is an excellent platform on how we can work together and showcase what we do best on an international level.
Thank you, Susanna, and thank you for the work that you are doing for ICC here in Sweden, and also the work that ICC is doing globally. Really important things, so thank you.
Thank you.
It seems like digitalization is not failing us after all, and we have Ingemar with us, so please, without any ado.
Hello, Andreas, if you can hear me now this time. I was looking forward to talking to you about digitalization, but I think we were maybe affected by what we call here the great Chinese firewall, which sometimes make international communication a little bit more difficult. But maybe now it's working again, so thank you for having me. So I wanted to say that digitalization here in China is really something else, especially from the standpoint of daily life. So for instance, as an example, everything is paid and handled via your mobile phone. Without your mobile phone, you're nobody, you're nothing. Cash is not used, credit cards even less. And there's two apps that handle everything. And it's not only payments, it's also communication as well. It's like instead of having a business card, you have a QR code, social media, WeChat, and then you're connected, and then you never need to have an email or anything. So it's very, very, very different. I wanted to say also I have some new facts from this week actually. The 13 million populated Shenzhen, where I'm living, has just reached full 5G coverage this month. And they have actually installed more than 46,000 base stations, becoming the world's first 5G city. And this is more base stations here in Shenzhen than it is deployed in all of Europe at this point. So you can understand the speed of digitalization that is going on here in China. All over China, they have already deployed more than 400,000 base stations for 5G. So it's really, really moving fast. But there is also a contrast, and that's what I found very interesting and strange. Banking and corporate payment systems are way behind what we would expect with this digitalization level. So here, physical signatures and especially the for China so typical company chop which is a registered rubber stamp in red ink. That's much more important than any signature from the general manager like myself. I put a red stamp on the paper and with no name, that's what they want to have. So very big contrast. And you also had a follow-up question there about what we expect post-COVID. I think for China, COVID was a very short adventure, and the speed of digitalization is not stopping for anything. So we're just moving very fast ahead.
Thank you so much, Ingemar. And interesting to see also that you think that digitization is going with intensive speed ahead. So thank you. And it's actually, time flies when you have fun discussions and interesting conversations. And it's actually time already to wrap this seminar up. So for the final words, I'd like to invite up Business Sweden's CEO, Ylva Berg.
Thank you, Andreas, and thank you all of you who have been with us this day on the World Trade Day this year. I believe it has been some very interesting discussions, and I would like to extend a big thank you to all our speakers and panelists. I think it has been very, very interesting to listen to all of you, to your bright comments, and hear all your insightful comments on the matter of international trade. And especially in a time that is so much colored by the corona pandemic. I can agree with some of you that some of the results have actually been pretty surprising in this survey. And one is, of course, the importance of the level of digitalization that I was also very much surprised to see. But also another one that kind of jumped out when I read the findings, and that was that the level of thinking green and thinking in a sustainable way didn't come through in a much clearer way than what it did. But my hope and my ambition is that this year is the starting point for this business climate survey, and that we will continue to collaborate with the Swedish Chambers of Commerce, with the Swedish embassies and consulates, and also with the Stockholm School of Economics, and do this in this fantastic good Team Sweden spirit that we have had a collaboration during the last year, and that we will continue building on the knowledge and the data bank that we have started now to build up. And next year, maybe we will find totally new findings when time has passed and this new reality has kind of settled in with us. I think that kind of concludes this seminar. I would like to extend a very, very big thank you to Andreas, who have hosted this seminar, and they have done it in such a classy fashion as they always do at the Swedish Chamber of Commerce here in Stockholm. And I would also like to urge all of you to please stay safe, and I hope that I will connect with all of you very, very soon again. Thanks a million, Andreas. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, Ylva. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, panelists. And thank you to all the viewers that have joined us here today for this exciting event. I hope to see you next year again. Stay safe.